When gold chose its master. It began with a single shipment, 3 wagons laden with gold bars, escorted by soldiers through winding mountain passes toward a capital that believed salvation lay within their gleaming cargo. The kingdom receiving the shipment claimed it as repayment, a long overdue settlement from a rival state. But behind the scenes, diplomats whispered a different truth: this transfer was not repayment at all, but the opening move of a contest for control that would reshape the balance of power across Europe. To understand why one shipment of gold carried such weight, we must return to an age when nations did not measure strength only by armies or territory, but by the metal stored in their vaults. Gold was more than wealth, it was certainty. It anchored currencies, secured alliances, and underwrote every ambition from war to trade. Whoever controlled gold controlled possibility itself. And in a time of spiraling debts and shifting allegiances, that power mattered more than ever. The first reveal begins with the origins of the gold. It had been accumulated not through mining or conquest, but through decades of quiet lending by a secluded financial house with influence stretching across borders. This house, known only to a few, acted as banker to monarchs who preferred discretion over debate. Their agreements lacked public record. Their terms remained locked in private ledgers. And over time, their vaults filled with the unspoken obligations of Europe's mightiest rulers. Then came the second beat. The financial house, sensing an opportunity, offered the gold as a reallocation of resources to stabilize the region. But the offer carried conditions, subtle, cryptic, and carefully framed. The gold would serve as collateral for a new monetary alliance, one that granted the house extraordinary influence over the participating kingdoms. The shipment, therefore, was not a gift. It was a claim of authority, disguised as generosity. The receiving kingdom welcomed the gold with ceremonial praise, unaware or unwilling to acknowledge that accepting it bound them to a structure they did not control. Their treasury rejoiced. Their ministers spoke of new policies made possible by this unexpected windfall. But a few advisors noticed inconsistencies in the delivery logs, the weight tallies, the seals affixed to the bars. None of the records aligned perfectly. It was as if the gold had been altered, divided, or restamped along its journey. These advisors began to whisper a disturbing possibility: the gold did not merely come with strings attached. It may not have truly belonged to the state that sent it or to the one that received it. And in the shadows of Europe's courts, rival powers began watching closely, sensing that the gold had chosen a master. But no one yet knew who, or why, or at what cost. The gold's arrival stirred excitement across the capital, but beneath the celebration, unease crept through the institutions responsible for safeguarding the kingdom's wealth. Mint officials examining the bars discovered that several bore markings from mints that had ceased operation decades earlier. Others carried seals from states that denied ever issuing them. A few bars appeared to have been melted and recast, their purity consistent, but their origin erased. This was not a simple repayment. This was a puzzle carved in metal. As the reveal deepened, analysts compared the shipment to historical ledgers obtained from the secluded financial house that orchestrated the transfer. What they found was troubling. The gold seemed to link multiple monarchs, empires, and treaties, each bar a relic from a different era of obligation. That meant the shipment was not one debt paid, but many debts rearranged. Someone had reorganized the continent's financial history and delivered the results in wagons. Inside the treasury, conflict began to take shape. Ministers divided into factions. Some welcomed the newfound wealth, insisting the kingdom seize the opportunity to expand influence. Others warned that accepting gold of uncertain origin risked entangling the realm in disputes far beyond its borders. A few advisors whispered the most dangerous suspicion of all, that the gold's true owner was still watching, waiting for the moment to reclaim control. Diplomats from neighboring states added new layers of tension. Envoys arrived with polite inquiries masked as veiled threats. They asked how much gold had been delivered, under what terms, and with what expectations. Though no one spoke directly of concern, their questions revealed fear that this shipment would shift the balance of power and leave their kingdoms vulnerable. Some even implied that the gold had once been stolen from their own reserves, seized in wars, or appropriated in secret agreements long forgotten. Foreign courts soon experienced unexplained fluctuations in their own gold reserves. Inventories no longer aligned with archived records. Notes of transfer appeared in ledgers without accompanying receipts. Slowly, rulers realized that the secluded financial house had interwoven their fortunes more tightly than any treaty before it. The shipment was merely the first thread pulled from a vast, hidden tapestry. Meanwhile, the kingdom that received the gold found itself under growing scrutiny. Guild masters demanded proof of authenticity. Citizens, sensing opportunity or danger, withdrew savings and converted them into precious metals. Markets trembled as traders speculated on whether the gold would stabilize the region or plunge it into conflict. The pressure escalated when a secret memorandum surfaced, written by an anonymous treasury clerk. It claimed that the gold carried embedded markings readable only under specific light, revealing code numbers tied to confidential accounts across Europe. If true, the financial house had not delivered gold at all, but a map of debts and dependencies disguised as treasure. The leak ignited a wave of panic. What had seemed a gift now looked like leverage. What resembled repayment now appeared to be control. And the kingdom that received the shipment realized they were no longer holding gold. They were holding a weapon, one whose consequences they could neither predict nor contain. The kingdom's crisis intensified the moment auditors confirmed what everyone feared: the coded markings on the gold were real. Under specialized lamps, faint symbols emerged: numbers, initials, and dates that corresponded to confidential transactions recorded in ledgers the public was never meant to see. Each bar of gold was more than a unit of value, it was evidence. Evidence of loans concealed behind diplomatic gestures. Evidence of monarchs indebted to forces outside their borders. Evidence of a financial network woven so deeply into Europe's foundations that pulling one thread might unravel the stability of dozens of states. The revelation struck the palace like a lightning bolt. Ministers demanded an emergency council. Advisors argued the gold should be returned immediately, before the kingdom became responsible for debts it never incurred. Others insisted that returning it would be seen as weakness, even guilt. A third faction proposed using the information encoded in the bars to expose the financial house, revealing their manipulation of monarchs across the continent. But such an act risked igniting a conflict no army could prepare for. Outside the palace, the public sensed the shift. Rumors spread through markets and taverns, stories of cursed gold, of forged alliances, of monarchs trading sovereignty for survival. Prices soared as citizens hoarded silver and copper, unwilling to trust a currency now intertwined with foreign secrets. Merchants halted shipments, afraid that accepting the kingdom's coin might entangle them in a growing international dispute. Confidence eroded faster than officials could respond. Foreign courts reacted with fury. Ambassadors delivered stern messages demanding explanations for the gold's mysterious markings. Several kingdoms accused the financial house of double lending, using the same reserves to secure conflicting agreements with rival states. Others claimed the shipment constituted theft, a reallocation of assets that did not belong to the receiving realm. In every corner of Europe, the bars became symbols of accusation. Inside the financial house, panic replaced precision. Their control, once absolute, faltered as rulers questioned their motives. Locked chambers filled with frantic bargaining. Some advisors argued they should reveal the truth, that the gold had been moved intentionally to prevent a collapse of the system they managed in secret. Others warned that such transparency would destroy their purpose entirely. Silence or confession, both paths led toward disaster. The conflict reached its height when a small but powerful kingdom, one that recognized its own sovereign markings on several bars, declared the shipment an act of aggression. They demanded the immediate return of their gold, accompanied by compensation for damages and a formal apology. Their threat was clear: refusal could mean war. Diplomats scrambled, but their pleas fell on deaf ears. Sovereignty itself was at stake. Within the receiving kingdom, pressure mounted. The monarch faced the greatest dilemma of their reign. Holding the gold risked igniting a continental firestorm. Returning it risked exposing the pact they had unwittingly joined. Destroying it risked erasing the only evidence capable of preventing further manipulation by the financial house. The build-up surged toward breaking point when the kingdom's chief auditor made a final discovery, one that overshadowed every prior revelation. Hidden deep in the encoded markings were references not just to debts, but to future obligations. Promises made on behalf of monarchs who never approved them. Agreements set to activate under specific conditions that had not yet occurred. The gold was not just a record of the past. It was a blueprint for control. With this truth laid bare, the kingdom understood the scale of the crisis. The gold had chosen its master. But the master was not a crown, not a state, not a nation. It was the silent institution that had orchestrated Europe's debts for generations. And the time for reckoning was drawing near. The reckoning began before dawn, when the monarch gathered their council in the war chamber, a room traditionally reserved for military crises, not financial ones. Yet what lay before them was nothing less than a war of influence, and the gold at the center of it had become the most dangerous weapon in Europe. The council understood that every possible choice carried consequences that could shake the continent to its core. The climax struck when the monarch issued a stunning declaration: the kingdom would not return the gold, nor would it submit to the financial house that had engineered the crisis. Instead, the kingdom would expose the hidden network in full. Every encoded marking, every falsified transaction, every future obligation buried in the bars would be published for the world to see. The decision shattered centuries of secrecy in a single sentence. The reaction was instantaneous. Across Europe, monarchs awoke to discover their private dealings laid bare. Ledgers they believed were locked away in distant vaults appeared in public squares. Secret alliances dissolved overnight. Some rulers denied the documents, calling them forgeries. Others panicked, ordering arrests of advisors who had negotiated in the shadows. A few quietly fled their courts, fearing retaliation from their own people. Markets crashed, then surged, then crashed again. Gold prices spiked uncontrollably as citizens scrambled to secure what little they could. The financial house, once feared, now cornered, issued frantic statements claiming they acted only to preserve stability. But every document released contradicted their assurances. Their network of influence, spanning generations, collapsed under the weight of its exposure. Foreign powers prepared for conflict. Troops mobilized. Fleets repositioned. Yet amid the chaos, something unexpected occurred. Smaller kingdoms, long manipulated by the clandestine system, united in outrage rather than fragmentation. They demanded a continental summit not to apportion blame, but to build a future free from secret control. Their shared anger became a shield against the opportunism of larger states. The resolution began as delegates from dozens of realms gathered in a neutral city to negotiate the foundations of a new financial order. Transparency became the first principle. No treaty could contain hidden clauses. No debt could be issued without public disclosure. No institution could operate without oversight. Gold reserves would be independently audited, and their origins verified by an impartial council. The era of quiet manipulation was over. The receding kingdom, once terrified of the burden placed upon it, emerged as an unlikely leader. By exposing the truth rather than surrendering to it, they had transformed their vulnerability into moral authority. Their actions forced Europe to confront the shadow that had shaped its politics, its markets, and its monarchs for generations. And the gold itself? It was never melted, never held as treasure. It was sealed in a transparent vault visible to all, belonging to none, preserved as a reminder of the deception it once carried and the reckoning it finally delivered. This story carries a warning for our world today. Power hidden behind closed doors does not stay hidden forever. Influence without accountability will always seek a master. And trust, once broken, can only be rebuilt in the open. Subscribe to join the journey.